Once upon a time, when I was a young and idealistic student, I used to look at the world and see all the solutions that seemed so obvious. And so I tried to change the world. But I was just one person and mostly inexperienced, and that didn't work. So I went back to my city and saw all the ills facing society and set to telling them how to fix it. But they couldn't hear me. So I looked at my community and shared all the ways they could do better. But they weren't listening. So I went back to my house and saw where my family needed to improve and thought they would be thrilled with the free advice. But that alienated them mostly because I hadn't yet learned the best lead by example. So I looked at myself in the mirror and I understood that the only person I could really change is myself. So I got to work. And over time, my family felt the impact and joined me. And we created a shift in our community. And together with our community, we reframed the focus of our city. And now, my friends, together, me, you, our community, my guests, this city, we will shape the landscape of the world. And that is what we are going to tackle today. Raise your hand if you have been following my journey of Jax, if you were here from the beginning, when I asked if you were awake, when I told you that we would look for the helpers, that we would consider what our responsibility is as people, community members, and global citizens. We talked with thought leaders and change makers. We addressed when to engage and even touched on some tools for how to do so successfully. And now, my friends, borrow my binoculars and let me introduce you to an overnight success story that took 30 years to get here. The brave, bold Jacksonville. My guest today is a man who has faced brutality, scrutiny, hostility, which makes the fact that he resonates with dignity, empathy, and humanity a testament to his place in our culture. A survivor who thrives and in spite of everything believes that you must leave them better than you found them. The first Black sheriff of Jacksonville, former president of his alma mater, Edward Waters University, Mr. Nathaniel Glover. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here.
I am honored to be here.
Let's start at the beginning of Bold. In the mid-1990s, then Sheriff Jim McMillan was quoted saying that Jacksonville is not ready for a Black sheriff. You then became the first Black sheriff elected by a majority in Florida post-Reconstruction. This past election, we saw all Black candidates but one run for sheriff of Jacksonville. Then the runoff between T.K. Waters and Lakeisha Burton, the first Black woman candidate for sheriff, to take the position of the second Black sheriff in Jacksonville. We are witnessing the seeds you personally planted and sowed in the bold South. You, sir, got to see your ceiling smashing come full circle. How does that make you feel?
Well, again, it makes me feel proud. First, I can say that. But what I'm always interested in, as you indicated earlier, is leaving it better than I found it. And when, incidentally, Sheriff McMillan, who incidentally was a classmate of mine in the academy, and probably one of the fairest men that I knew, and he actually indicated that he wasn't certain if Jacksonville was ready for an African-American sheriff. And he had also committed to one of the other candidates. And it came up because there were rumors at the time that I might consider running. And in a strange way, that added quite a bit of focus to the potential that I might run and the race itself. And so while others might look at that as kind of a misfortunate statement and that kind of thing, it was actually motivating. And incidentally, it also motivated the community to take a close look.
So this is like a first game of truth or dare, right?
Well, one could make that case. But I look at it like it was kind of a message. If that is the case, let's see. And of course, I eventually decided to run, and it was quite an odyssey.
So in media, sometimes they say that there's no such thing as bad publicity. It could have been that very statement brought to the attention of people who weren't even aware. We're talking about today that we want to get people out to vote. I'm sure 30 years ago, there were even less likely to be people who were going to take themselves out to vote. That could have been the catalyst.
Well, you said it about as well as it can be said. No, that's exactly what happens. See, sometimes we look at situations and we say, that's the worst thing could have happened. But as it plays out, and this has happened in my life so many times, as it plays out, it sometimes turned out to be maybe the best thing that could have happened. And that was just one of those situations.
Yes, we have this expression in Judaism, gamzu l'tova, also this is for the good. We don't know the big picture. That's God's plan. So it's our job to stay focused on what our journey is, our purpose is. And so you had the intention that you were going to leave this place better than you found it. How that came to be, those pieces fell into place.
Yes, and it has to do a lot with faith. Sometimes it's those things that's unseen, and you just have to have the confidence that all things will work for good.
True story. We all have a history and a personal journey that informs who we become. In movies, we have seen fictional characters overcome unthinkable challenges, and in those moments, they have to choose whether they will be a victim or survivor. Will they be bitter or better? Can you share a moment in your life when you said to yourself, I must stand up and speak out. This is my moment?
Well, I'm going to say that one of the things you have to do, if you're going to be the type person that's going to be forthright, speak out, and make certain, number one, that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. Now, no one is right 100% of the time. So sometimes you may get something wrong, but certainly it should be with the intent of getting it right. So, and the second thing is, if you want people to listen to you, you must be a person that they see as creditable. So if you're going to be a person who's known for doing a certain things, doing something that's significant, then it's going to be something that you must have done well enough that people will lean forward when you start to speak. Because if you watch the body language now, you hear a whole lot of people talking sometime, and you watch the audience, and the audience are just tolerating what they're saying and allowing them to say it because we're in a free speech environment, and then we move on. But then there are others who speak. The audience will somewhat kind of, in a gesture, lean forward. Now they are listening because you deserve to be heard. And so when I was sheriff, and I was the first African-American sheriff elected in the state of Florida since Reconstruction. Now, it was one of those situations that I had to get it right. And not only that, mediocrity was not a luxury that I could enjoy. So I had to make certain that I was up early, working late, and did it as well as it can be done. And I'm hoping it created the environment that we've talked about earlier, where there was no pushback when we had all of those candidates of color in the last sheriff race. People were just trying to pick the best one.
Right. Right. So in your experience, would you say that it was the trajectory of this history, if we look at the arc of Nat Glover's personal history, that it's always been a stand up and speak out moment for you because you've been under this microscope as having been the first. You don't get the luxury of failing and then figuring it out. You have to do all your work and all your problem solving on the side and make sure that it's all tightened up before you can even present it.
That's true. But it goes back to one of the foundations of who I think I am, and that is I'm going to try to do the right thing for the right reason. And you see, sometimes people do things and it looks good, but the motives are sometimes questionable. So it starts in the heart, starts in who you are, and what your intent is. So I am one of those individuals. If I feel like that we are talking about a subject that I might be somewhat ill-informed, biased, maybe not the most balanced person to ask about it, then I'm going to do a little research and talk with someone whom I feel like would give me the kind of, I'm going to say, advice that would be sound enough for me to repeat.
That's the smartest thing I've ever heard. A man who admits, or a woman, a person who admits that they have yet to know, they have more to learn, that they're seeking to discover, can be held in the higher regard than someone who comes in and purports to know everything, right?
Right.
Because chances are I'll catch you with a mistake.
Right.
But if you've come to me with a growth mindset, that you're entering every room looking to appreciate our nuanced differences and how we can grow together and elevate each other, then you're leaving this world better than you found it.
Yes, and that's certainly my intent, and you put that well, also.
Write a note to my husband. Tell him that you like talking to me. The Frederick Douglass Family Initiative just launched a publishing platform to give a voice to Black and brown authors. Their first book is about Frederick Douglass. Their second book is yours, Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. They feel your book aligns with the legacy of Frederick Douglass, which is using the power of our voice, our responsibility to the truth, and a commitment to history. What inspired you to write your memoir?
Well, Susie, I really did have some challenges when it actually came to putting pen to paper, so to speak. And for years, people have been saying to me, you need to write about your life because you've done this, that, and the other. And of course, I, being a little cynical, and maybe that's from my investigative background, always thought that sometimes people say nice things because they want to be nice to you. And I really didn't think that I was at a level where I would be maybe sending someone a message and that kind of thing. So I took the compliment and kind of brushed it off. But it kept coming. Now, I'm going to say, in my leadership teaching, one of the things I say, and I do believe this, if one person calls you a jackass, don't worry about it, because it could be bias, it could be because of personal reason. If two people call you a jackass, then, of course, you need to pause and think about it. If three people call you a jackass, you're probably a jackass. Okay? Now, there's some good news in that, and there's some bad news. The bad news is obvious. You're a jackass. But the good news is, now you know it. So, if you know that's the case, then you can initiate remediation or try to do it better.
The first step is admitting you have
That's
a problem.
Right. You got to acknowledge it first.
Yes.
So when enough people had started to say the same thing to me, so I thought that, well, maybe I need to look at this. And I started to put pen to paper, and I'm going to tell you, Susie, without hesitation or reservation, it was one of the best things I've done. And I'm so glad I did it because, to be honest with you, cumulatively, it was more there than I had ever thought to sit down and just think about cumulatively.
Yeah.
So I eventually did it, and I am so glad that I did do it.
I think we're all privileged that you did do it. In fact, I find it so surprising that it took so much convincing because for me, I'm a Northerner. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a born and raised city girl. And so the stories of the South that we would learn about in history textbooks, right? It was the Civil War. It was the Mason-Dixon line. It seemed almost like made up. It really did, because it was drawings in our history. Back in the olden days, we had history books. Remember those books, sir?
Very well.
And remember they used to have drawings in them, but they didn't have pictures back then. They had like sketches or the artistic renderings, and it didn't look real. And then I moved to the South, and I've said more than one time, it's the first place I saw a Confederate flag. It's the first time I saw racism in my life. It's the first time I saw a swastika, and I've been to places with concentration camps. It was also the first place I saw men like you who said, I'm going to record for history the positive outcomes, what you just talked about. We make that decision that this is who the world says we are. We can stay in our lane or we can redirect like a GPS system. You don't like where you're going, you don't like what your legacy might look like to other people, you can affect that change. So you, sir, are an actionable change here to a South that I only saw in a book. And now the next book I'm reading, I can't believe other people have the luxury to listen to these anecdotes, these stories that you weave. And they're better than any rendering I saw in any history book. I could see it with my own eyes. I didn't know about Axe Handle Sunday or Saturday. See? Mm-hmm. I'm not from here, but that is a monumental moment for this city that I'm choosing to raise my children in. So if we don't look at history, if we don't record the progress, what might happen?
Well, let me just say, Axe Handle Saturday, actually, I think it was a molding moment for Nat Glover. And most people know the story, one that for years I was hesitant to tell. And the reason I was hesitant to talk about it was because when I got surrounded by the racist Klansmen with the axe handles, and I ran to a police officer for help, and he said, you better get out of here before they kill you. And I ran, and I went home. And I cried. And I cried of quite a long time. And I was not crying because they had hit me with the axe handles, and they did hit me, but I didn't feel the pain of the blows. I ran because I was afraid. I had never been so afraid in all my life. And in my neighborhood at that time, if you ran away from a fight, they called you a coward, which you would have to live with the rest of your life. So the molding moment for me was I stood in my front yard and I said to myself, I will never run away from a fight again. And in my mind, I was thinking I would rather die than run away. And from that day to this day, I've been one of those individuals who run toward the fire than run away from the fire. And of course, that shaped my law enforcement career in a number of instances, distinguishing me so that I could, let's say, end up being sheriff eventually, and of course, being inducted into Law Enforcement Hall of Fame.
I just let go of my breath. I wasn't breathing the whole time you were speaking. Remember, you mentioned earlier about leaning forward. So I've been holding my breath because for me, I grew up with 4 Holocaust survivors. All 4 of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and tragedy and trauma is part of our story, our history. And we didn't think about the idea of hiding. I didn't have the luxury of saying those numbered tattoos on people's arms. We weren't going to show them. We felt differently. I brought my grandmother to school every year on Holocaust Remembrance Day so that I could show people who didn't know about it. This is real life. This is what happened to people when you didn't pay attention, when you weren't caring for everyone who didn't look like you or sound like you or act like you. And you had that moment of never again. How old were you then?
17.
17. To reach out to a public servant, a police officer, who's supposed to be the epitome of safety, of rescue, of comfort. And he tells you, you better keep running. I'm not here to protect you.
But it's a funny thing. One of the things about my law enforcement career is that I was a detective for most of my law enforcement career. And being a detective, you learn to see those things that's not so apparent. And while people would always say how awful that police officer was that wouldn't help me, I was thinking about that, and this was years ago, and I could not forget the fact that that police officer being there might have saved my life, because when they were hitting me with those axe handles, they was hitting my shoulders, legs, and my arms, and all of that. It didn't take but one to just wrap back like a baseball player and hit me in the head and kill me. So, but I believe because that police officer was standing just outside of the circle watching was the reason that I'm probably here today. Now, he wasn't the most, I'm going to say, stellar example of what a police officer should have done when he
would not have lasted under Sheriff Glover, that is for sure.
Well, believe me, he would have had to answer to Sheriff Glover. But the fact of the matter is, I did get a chance to run, retreat, and I did get out of there. And now I'm sitting here before Susie.
Yeah, you are. And it's my privilege because you carry this message of hope. And you carry this message that we are a product of our circumstance, but we are not confined to them, right? We can come up with the answer, and then at the end, we can change how we present to the rest of the world.
Well, I want to be an example, and I want to be an example that would be a motivation to those who would take time to watch.
The proceeds from your book will go to fund a scholarship called Where They Will Shine, while we talk about, highlighting the good. Students who qualify can apply through FSCJ, but they can use the money to attend either FSCJ, UNF, JU, or your alma mater, Edward Waters University. You also personally donated $250,000 of your own police pension to send students to college. Why is supporting education so important to you?
Well, because it made such a difference in my life. And I've always taught to give back. And believe me, when I was trying to become a police officer, I had I'm going to say an unfortunate incident in my youth that I was arrested when I was a young man. But I still wanted to be a police officer. And I believed, as I sit here today, the only reason that I was able to navigate the process of becoming a police officer was because I had a college degree when I applied. And that gave me the edge because I applied during the time that they were very, very careful about the hiring of African Americans. And it was clear that, and others were saying, that they were not exactly creating a receptive environment. So there were people who went down to take the test and were pretty certain that they should have qualified. They came back and said they didn't qualify. But I had a set of circumstances that helped in my favor that I got selected to take the test. And I think the college degree was the edge, I call it. And so when I became sheriff, I found myself in a position where I had retired from the sheriff's office and I would be getting a monthly pension plus the salary for being sheriff. So I felt like that I would create scholarships for young people who met the requirements of being, I hate to use the word poor, but maybe need-based. And I just want to give back.
Chapter 18 of your memoir is titled, My Leadership Blueprint, Dream Fearlessly, Care Intensely, Expect Abundantly, and Risk Boldly. You can start there, but you must leave them better than you found them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence that it's chapter 18, which is the Hebrew numerology for Chai, life. It's also my son's baseball number.
Okay.
Because I would say that chapter, that exemplifies the blueprint of your life, of your leadership, of everything that you have set forth as what we can do to continue this trajectory of not just the bold Jacks, but the brave, bold Jacks, brilliant Jacks.
Yes.
At this point, you have been designated a great Floridian.
Yes.
You are inducted into the Florida Law Enforcement Hall of Fame. You received a 1 Jacks Humanitarian Lifetime Achievement Award. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, right now, I think when you a Hall of Fame sheriff and great Floridian, I didn't, as I said earlier, I wasn't necessarily that impressed with my accomplishments. I wasn't personally. Most people were. And the reason I'm sitting here talking to you is because I finally came to the conclusion that I need to leave something that will be here even when I've moved on, passed on. And so this whole notion of becoming a Hall of Famer and this great Floridian award, I remember at the awards ceremony, I'm thinking, my goodness, what did I do to get here? And we had a reception, and one of the senators came up to speak, and he said, And because I didn't think it was that big a deal. But this senator said, think about it. If you have the governor of a state looks across the state, and out of 20 million people, he decide that he want to recognize you as an outstanding person, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And then I started to think, that is a big deal. So I appreciate that much, much more now. But let me say, my legacy, I would like for people to think that I was able to put people in place who will help others get to the next level. And what I advocate, teach, consult on is effective leadership. Because that's what I think in businesses, I think in law enforcement, I think in nonprofits, effective leadership is lacking. You have so many people holding positions of leadership that's not doing anything but checking the box of making certain no one shows up late or leave early. But if you are a leader, you inspire, you motivate, and you encourage people to be better. And you make certain that a person who's doing the job that you are supervising or leading over, you make certain they are productive. And if they are not productive, you try to find a place where they can be productive, you see. But, it's just like anything else. Person may not be able to run the 100-yard dash, but they might be able to shoot a basketball. So you need to get him off the track team and get him on the basketball court. So that's the way I kind of see it.
Well, I am in awe of you, sir, and it is such a privilege to get to spend time and learn from you, and I will take any nuggets of leadership that you are willing to give over. Thank you so much, Mr. Glover.
Thank you, Susie, and I appreciate this opportunity as well.
Same. It's time for our honorable mention. Mensch is the Yiddish word for a person of integrity and honor with a sense of what is right and responsible. The inaugural Mensch, the legendary Mensch, is, was, and always will be my dad, Jerry Pollack. The final honorable Mensch of this season is his grandson, my son DJ. From food packs for the homeless to raising funds and awareness, when I think of someone who, just like his pop-pop, sees how to be the help people need before they ask, and with dignity, my heart swells knowing that he will be the 2.0 version of change. By always working on himself while positively impacting our family and trying to encourage our community so we can work to improve our city, and together we can serve as an inspiration to shine a light on the world. I love you as high up as Pop-Up, and we are so proud of you, kid. That will do it for us today and for this season. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to follow Schmooze with Suze on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to get your daily dose of chutzpah. I'm Suze, your well-informed smartass who's not afraid to stand up and speak out. Because what's an envelope if not for pushing? Stay inspired and inspiring.